Hi there. I'm making this video for the final project of one of my college courses relating video games to culture. I played Valley in an attempt to answer the question of whether a video game's environment can make someone respect the outside world in real life. Just so you guys are aware, there will be spoilers ahead. When the game begins, you hear a phone message click on from an unnamed friend and line out why you're going on the journey. Essentially, you're going to find the life seed, a mythical item thought to have the ability to end the world. Your character, like the friend, is unnamed. The initial credits for the game roll underwater, and you find your character crawling up out of that water after they're over. You're given free control of your characters from this point on, and are introduced to the way that the character speaks. I use the word speaks loosely because they talk in the form of words popping up on the screen like thought bubbles on a comic character's inner voice. While walking along a trail, just a little way from where you start the game, you find the leaf suit, one of the biggest parts of the story and what the game essentially revolves around. The suit is made special because it controls Amrita, essentially life force that controls life and death. The suit has a built-in tape player that kicks in historically relevant parts of the game. To sum it all up briefly, the US Army had a secret project called Pendulum that was essentially a sister to the Manhattan Project for the development of superweapons. Pendulum was kept completely secret from the majority of the government, and those that were on the project couldn't leave until it was finished. The project revolved around using the life seed to power superweapons with the ability to wipe out entire countries. The head of Pendulum, Andrew Fisher, went crazy after the Manhattan Project beat them to the punch and the nukes were dropped. But instead of stopping the project, he began pushing the facilities housing the life seed and the personnel at his disposal way past the limits. This is where the story gets weird. The life seed began sucking the life out of the surrounding valley and attracted fully grown versions of daemons, which happened to be the Native American mythical creatures Wendigos. The Wendigos killed everyone in the Pendulum program. The facilities, with no one to maintain them, fell back into sort of a rest mode. That brings us to present day. Now that you have the leaf suit at your disposal, you can maneuver through the valley with much more ease. I'm going to gloss over some of the in-depth exposition just to save some time. You take the leaf suit and find your way through a huge tree, a bunch of abandoned military warehouses, and a train station, only to arrive at the Soma facility, where the life seed lies dormant. Once you remove the life seed, the facility flashes warning lights and tells you that the Astra facility will begin sucking the life out of the valley to continue to power itself. You find that the Astra and Soma facilities act as a counterbalance to each other, and the removal of the power source will send the other into overload. The Astra facility begins to kill off everything around the valley to keep itself powered by Amrita. You must stop this from happening because it will eventually suck all the Amrita out of the earth and we'll all die. You make your way through a bunch of training grounds, ruins, more military warehouses, and across a lake to arrive at Astra. Astra houses the Thanatos cannon, which is the superweapon that was being developed by Pendulum. To end the destruction caused by the Astra facility, you load the life seed into the cannon and fire it at Soma, which in turn destroys both facilities. You make an escape from Astra and land in the aforementioned lake, only to shed the leaf suit underwater and surface to a burning valley. Now that the exposition and backstory are out of the way, I'm going to focus on some questions that I've come up with to support or supplement my primary question, which, just to restate, is whether a video game can bring someone to respect the environment they live in real life. The first question is, do games attempt to set the player up so that they have to be in awe of the game world created? The answer I've come up with by playing Valley, among another slew of games, is yes. Have you ever been playing a game and you're climbing this big tower, mountain, or whatever, and when you reach the top, the camera pans out, the music crescendos, and you're treated to this wonderful view of your surroundings? Valley gives you plenty of eye candy to marvel at, and is a perfect example of why this is important to my overall question. I think that if people see what the world is, looks like, or could be through the eyes of that character they play as, they immediately gain a different perspective of that world. The second question I'd like to pose is what about the setting of a game affects our idea of places in the world, digital or real? I think that one of the best examples of the way that games affect the way we think about our world would be Grand Theft Auto 5. GTA 5 is essentially just a recreation of California that makes many geographical locations into one centralized map. Anywhere from the streets of its large cities to the massive desert area are a good representation of what California is like. Not necessarily the people that populate Grand Theft Auto 5, but the things that happen in that world make it seem eerily close to ours. Certain animals will attack their usual prey, people will stop to take pictures of a nice car you drive by in, and cars will begin to leak fluid if damaged enough. The list really goes on. To relate this to the question posed, one of the main things that makes a game environment close to what the real thing is like are the small things that you don't really notice unless you're looking for them. To put in other words, someone won't appreciate the small things in the real world until they're noticed. Video games are a way of noticing them. To answer the question, I believe that games provide a medium where players can see the way that the real world acts without leaving the house. The third question I want to pose is, do in-game areas reflect real-life areas? Very many games follow the path where they reinvent the world in which we live. This path branches into many others, like what if the world was attacked by aliens, or what if Germany won World War II? I think that games have the ability to not just replicate the world, but also to expand it and allow us to further explore these questions. Books and movies did it before games, but games offer the player a way to interact actively with the possible worlds represented. And the fact that games allow people to kind of reach out and touch those worlds is really cool. But at the same time, there are games that try to stick to one-to-one recreations of an area, and those in and of themselves are really cool too. There is something about exploring a believable world that envelops you into wanting to look at every detail and see if it matches up with its real-world accomplice. Games like Assassin's Creed do this really well. They make cities of the past something that you could experience. You feel like you could walk the streets of those past cities without a map if you spend enough time in those games. Finally, I wanted to ask the question of whether the game's environment is built around the story or whether the story is built around the environment. I think that the answer to this question really depends on the game, honestly. In some games, like Ghost Recon Wildlands, the story is secondary to the exploration and improvement of your playstyle, character, and skills. Ghost Recon story missions and areas can be cleared in any order you see fit, slowly taking down the cartel bosses that you're fighting against. Though in other open-world games, like Nier Automata, the story is what takes the limelight. Exploration is only rewarded with a couple consumable items and bigger, badder enemies that you aren't yet ready for because the story hasn't carried you down that path yet. I want to talk about what Valley specifically did for the investigation into the major question I posed. The coolest thing, hands down, about Valley is the way that it handled the health system. Instead of your character's health or HP being shown, it instead showed the actual Valley's health. This was explained as the leaf suit taking Amrita energy from the environment and using it to revive the player upon death. This would in turn damage the valley, and I could restore health by returning life to the plants and animals that had their life taken so that I could live. What this did to the way I played was interesting. I found myself at maximum health and maximum energy, but still using that energy on healing the valley, even though there was nothing in it for me. This life and death balance of the game implemented truly affected the way that I played. The story also subtly hints at the idea that the rapid expansion of civilization and quest for power has an effect on the environment. At the end of the game, when your character resurfaces in the lake, the only remaining piece of the leaf suit is the tape recorder. It kicks on as you're floating through a forest that has been flooded and burned from the explosion, with debris raining from the sky. You're treated to Andrew Fisher, ranting on about a bigger weapon than the Thanatos cannon, which, keep in mind, could destroy entire countries. He declares that his goal is now to make one that could destroy continents. As he's talking, your character looks around at the destruction caused by this quest for power, and they just turn back and push the recorder into the lake. It's as if the game is saying obsession can lead to the destruction of the beauty of the world, or be careful what you wish for. Examining the way that Valley changed my way of playing, and the hints that it drops about obsession, craving destruction, and the way that we affect our environment, I can honestly say that I believe games can change the way that we look at our world, and they can change the way that we think about it too. They can teach us to care for our environment, and to respect the world around us. They could even teach us profound things about where we live.